So let's talk about positional isometrics for shoulder external rotation, which is this movement of the shoulder. Now, when we do a positional isometric, the idea behind it is that we're trying to close the gap between our passive range of motion and our active range of motion. So passive is where we can kind of passively move that shoulder into, and active is where we are actively bringing that into the range of motion. Some people have a big gap between passive and active motion, and we close that gap with positional isometrics. So they're effectively the same as a pales and rails contraction, except the rails part is an overcoming isometric, which means we have to pull into an immovable object, okay? So how I set this up is I'm going to show you today from a prone position on my tummy, and I've got 4 yoga blocks, but you can use books at home instead of the yoga blocks if you don't have yoga blocks. It just takes a little bit of playing around with it first to find your kind of end range of your active motion. So I've just popped a little book in between here because mine's quite high. So what you need to do is from your prone position, you want to come onto your tummy. I've got a yoga block here to rest my elbow on. So I want to make sure my elbow is on the same line as the shoulder and it's kind of in the center of that yoga block. And then your active range of motion, so if you were to start from the floor, you want to think, how far actively can I bring that shoulder up? And wherever that is, that's where the height of your books or your blocks need to be. And then I've just placed a dumbbell on the top, one that I can't actually lift off, so it needs to be an immovable object. And then I'm going to hold my dumbbell. So this is the end of my active range of motion. I'm just going to make sure that this is all set up. And you don't need to hold a stretch here because we're not trying to get more range of motion. We're just trying to close the gap between our passive and active range. So try not to bend your wrist. You want to make sure the wrist is in a neutral position. I'm going to grab that dumbbell, elbows in the center of the block. I'm just going to rest my forehead on my hand. And we do a pales contraction, which is driving the dumbbell down into the block. So I'm effectively trying to bring my shoulder into internal rotation. And I hold that for around 30 seconds. So I drive up that intensity for a period of 30 seconds, driving it down. And then after that 30 seconds, I'm going to attempt to lift the dumbbell off. So I'm effectively trying to pull my shoulder into more external rotation. So pales is driving down and rails is trying to pull up. Okay, so that's your positional isometric for shoulder external rotation. You want to find the end of that active range, give or take a few degrees. As that gap starts to get smaller, so if you do like a few sets over a period of a week, you can then make this a little bit higher because your active range is then going to increase. So just test it every time you come into this position, and as time goes on it will go a little bit higher because your active range will start to close between your passive range.